Charles Manson is one of the most infamous and evil cult leaders in the past century. His story shocked America and changed the 60s from a culture of peace and love into an environment infected with fear and paranoia. This video will explain the 5 steps that go into creating a cult-like following, how Charles Manson managed to actively apply such strategies, as well as give you some insight on how to protect yourself from being manipulated into one. Number 1. Keep it vague and simple. Within first contact with their victims, through initial speeches, conversations, and interviews, cult leaders and charlatans include 2 elements. The first, the promise of something great and transformative, something that will change their life, how to achieve a state of enlightenment, the secret formula to get the woman of your dreams, or the righteous path that will get you into paradise. Charlatans make their appeal simple. Despite the depth and the intricacies of human psyche, humans have little patience in trying to understand themselves or fixing their own problems. Instead of going inward, they look for easy solutions that quench their short-term thirsts. So, these con artists secretly pay attention to their followers' problems and provide simple solutions. The second element is vagueness. Cult leaders allude to a mystical experience. They ascribe their change to something ungraspable and mysterious. They talk about what made them abandon their own ways and what pushed them away from the valley of darkness. Remember, people are not interested in the truth about change. They don't want to follow what comes from hard work, boredom, or depression. They yearn for the romantic, the otherworldly, and the ethereal. In Manson's case, he offered them something as simple as a family that provides unconditional love in all of its earthly and otherworldly forms, something his followers didn't have. He would convince young followers that their parents never loved them and proclaim himself as the father figure they never had. We are a family. We make beautiful music. We let go of our past and how society wronged us. We are no longer your prisoners. We are free to love, for you to enjoy the eternal spring of life. Something like that. As a result of the constant exposure to these messages, his followers gave up their personalities to become what he showed them they can be. In their minds, it was total love. The combination of these elements will stimulate people's brains, encouraging fantasies that do not exist, and only get them to see what they want to see. Counter. Now, as a counter for this type of tactic, the best thing to do is to pay attention to detail. Always ask questions. Is this too good to be true? And most importantly, do as Law 40 states. Despise the free lunch. I'll be doing a video on that law in the future, so make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so not to miss it. Number 2. Emphasize the visual, the sensual over the intellectual. As their followers start to flock around them, charlatans must deal with 2 things that breed uncertainty: boredom and skepticism. Boredom pushes their followers to go somewhere else. Skepticism reveals to them what the leader is really about. In dealing with boredom, cult leaders use theater to amuse their followers. They create a great spectacle that dazzles them and stops them from seeing through the ridiculousness of such ideas. This is done by surrounding their believers with luxury, filling their eyes with mesmerizing colors, and overwhelming all of their senses. They dangle things in front of them to create a need, and then seduce them into doing what they want. This will not only get them to ignore the holes in such belief systems, but will push them to convert more followers. People like Manson know how to use the exotic, to play on people's fascination of different cultures, and how to steal like an artist. Lopez is a famous entrepreneur and media influencer with a cult-like following of over 3.1 million followers on Instagram and 1.3 million subscribers on YouTube. He's a master player of projecting people's needs visually. He does this by displaying his beautiful and expensive cars, walking through his multi-million-dollar mansions, and surrounding himself with attractive women. Not to say that Ty is a con artist or a cult leader, but a mere individual who understands such techniques and uses them to yield success and power for himself. Example: Charles Manson was a master player of this game. He would gather around his followers, write songs for them to sing together. He orchestrated orgies in order to keep them entertained, as well as he used psychedelics. He gave his followers drugs while taking small doses or none for himself. So when they are extremely high, he would control their experience and they would become more susceptible to suggestion. Skepticism. Cult leaders understand the danger of skepticism, so they filter out the cynics and do not let such infection grow for too long, because it will affect their followers' mindset and wake them up from their web of well-crafted illusions. As a solution to skepticism, Charles Manson created an intricate screening process and got rid of people who might spread chaos into the group or showed more signs of rebelliousness. Cult leaders often use isolation to control perceptions. In this case, Manson isolated his followers in the ranch. With no journals, no news, he would ban books, wristwatches, calendars and clocks, anything that gave them a perception of time or any perception other than his own. He asked his followers to imitate his facial expressions in physical movement. His word was the only word. Counter. Keep a habit of always distancing yourself from the group. Give yourself time to reflect and to see beyond the mirage. Number 3. Borrow the forms of organized religion to structure the group. The 5 forms are: the first form, find a way both elevating and comforting. Spiritual leaders create a structure that emanates power and loftiness. It doesn't neglect people's needs. They don't go too far with such disciplines so not to be seen as tyrants. The second form of organized religion is to create rituals. Rituals are a part of any faith. They help us to incorporate and reinforce our identities. In daily life, it could be something as simple as spending Friday night with your friends, or celebrating with your social media following by doing a live stream, or as complex as a sacrificial ceremony in the middle of a forest. However, in the case of the Manson family, Manson would write songs for the family and he would order the girls to sing them with him, or he would push men to let go of their sexual inhibitions in fear of homosexuality by going through all types of activities. Remember, rituals are the building blocks of any ideology. Number 3. Cult leaders often create a hierarchy. They rank their followers in grades of godliness and give them names and titles that resound with religious overtones. This can be seen in how Scientology organizes its followers in different ranks of enlightenment, or how Manson gave his followers special nicknames like Snake and Gypsy. The fourth form of organized religion is asking for sacrifices that will fill the pockets. Psychology experts state that we like people whom we can do favors for. This is why gurus get their followers to make small sacrifices that gradually become harder to fulfill. Charles sometimes forced his girls to have sex with men and potential influencers to lure them in and gain their favor. In the end, their ultimate sacrifice was to kill all of their victims in order to gain his fatherly acceptance. Number 5. The leader becomes a prophet. They talk and act like a prophet. In Charles' case, he had a habit of quoting the Bible as they gathered around the bonfire. He hinted in all ways that he was Jesus Christ without saying it directly. He would use subliminal messages, say it quickly, embed it between lots of other information, and he would say statements like, "They killed me before and it won't happen again," or "I have been crucified for humanity's sins centuries ago." He would talk about the significance of his name, Manson, man, son, the son of man. Counter. The way to fight against this is to learn to recognize such patterns and distance yourself from people who use them. Number 4. Cult leaders disguise the source of their income. Now that the following has grown and it's organized like a church, the disciples' gratitude and devotion will fill up the leader's pockets. When the leader surrounds himself with luxury, they indirectly prove the truth of their message in ways. They are cautious to never be seen as hungry for money or the power that it brings. They don't reveal that it comes from their followers' gifts or their services. In hiding this, the believers will copy the leader's every move in hope to achieve the same results. The more power and credibility a leader has, the more followers they attain. Counter. Keep track of the financial entities that you invest in. Always research the source of their income and their reputation, as well as ask for the help of financial experts. 5. Do you use the us versus them dynamic? as the cult is growing and thriving. If not careful, time and boredom will ruin the group. To stop this from happening, people like Manson make their followers believe that they belong to an exclusive club. These spiritual figures follow the path of all religions and create a common sense of purpose, an exterior enemy. And if they don't have enemies, they create one. They give their followers something to fight against, something that represents the opposite of what they preach, a cause to believe in, and infidels to oppose. Charles interpreted Beatles songs and explained how they were messages directed towards them. He specifically was obsessed with this one song, Helter Skelter, in which he explained how a race war will start in which the blacks will win against the whites until Manson will rise to lead the new world as a messiah. As the final piece of the puzzle, the Manson family were taught that there is no such thing as death. Most of it was taken care of by the drugs, and the rest laid in Manson's mastery of the art of insinuation. Understand, it's never difficult to create a following because of people's inherent need to believe in something, a cause, a purpose. We spend our lives looking for things that will fill our emptiness, expose us to something shiny and promising, and we will abandon reason and manufacture saints and prophets in our minds out of nothing. Cult leaders such as Manson do not let this gullibility go to waste, but instead make themselves an object to be worshipped. Know oneself and center it in rationality is the most important piece of advice in protecting yourself from being preyed upon in such manner. Question: have you ever been inside some cult without realizing it? Drop your answers below, and if you guys love my content, make sure to subscribe and let me know. Until next time.